welcome to Everything Swords. Today we have the Khopesh. Now this isn't exactly the Khopesh, but it's the closest thing I could find, so that's what you're gonna get. The Khopesh is one of the earliest and most influential models of sword to exist. It arose in the early Bronze Age in Mesopotamia. That was not a mistake. This weapon did originate from Mesopotamia at the start of the 2nd millennium BCE, and was eventually imported through Egypt through the Middle East. Although it would later be found in many places around the world, such as in ancient Greece and the Hittites, the sworn enemies of the Egyptian people. It could be found in Central and East African cultures, in the region containing modern Rwanda and Burundi. They used what appeared to be sickle-like daggers comparable to the Khopesh. A Khopesh-like sword or dagger was also found in Dravidian cultures in southern India, as well as parts of non-Dravidic Nepal in the north. The Khopesh was a very common military weapon in Egypt, but it was not just used in combat. It was also a ceremonial weapon, as could be seen in many ancient Egyptian tapestries, scripts, and if the person was well thought of, the Khopesh would be buried with them in their grave. The best example of this was King Tutankhamun, who was entombed with two Khopeshes of different sizes. The Khopesh, as I mentioned before, is one of the earliest models of swords, so much so that its design was not influenced by another sword. It was influenced by an axe, the Epsilon axe to be precise. The Epsilon axe was the model of weapon that came just before the sword. Though at this point you may ask yourself, why was a sword developed only 460,000 years into human evolution? It was because of the material that was used. Before, all humans could use was either rock or bad materials such as copper, so they could only make axes and spears effectively as weapons. But when bronze came around, it was solid enough to make a long blade such as the Khopesh. Eventually, though, the Khopesh was abandoned in the 12th century CE for better types of weapons, but it still had a good run of 3,200 years, becoming the most iconic Egyptian weapon in the process. The Khopesh was very valued, especially for its effectiveness in combat, and close quarters combat especially. Along with other variants of sickle-shaped swords, this sword was especially effective due to its slight hook, which allowed it to pull shields and other weapons away from an opponent. The Khopesh was a sickle-shaped weapon with the edge on the inside of the curve. The sword, however, was only usually 50 to 60 centimeters, so it was usually paired with a shield to make up for its small size. Since this weapon is the direct descendant of the axe, the fighting style incorporated both fighting styles, that for the axe and modern-day sword fighting. To make up for its size, it was paired with a large oval shield. While this was the most common pairing, some would dual-wield the Khopesh. The idea behind this was to attack so fast that the only thing the opponent could do was try and block. But this only worked if the user had incredible reflexes and quick thinking. But there were advantages to its small size. It meant you could do quick, powerful attacks and quickly retreat behind your shield, which was most commonly done. A soldier would wait to block an attack with their shield, and once the attack was blocked, they would immediately reciprocate. The curved edge along with the hook made it good for reaching around things, so even if an opponent blocks your strike, you could simply pull. Might not take the opponent's shield or sword or limb or whatever, but at least it would disorient them enough to pull them out of bounds, giving you a good opportunity to strike. However, these are all just improvisations of how the sword could have been used. Instead, the soldiers were trained to do a specific attack sequence. 3 strikes to the head, 1 to the elbow, and 1 to the legs. Of course, all this needed to be done while making sure there are no gaps in your defense. And of of course, if the opponent dies before the sequence ends, it does not need to be completed. In those times, the process of crafting was pretty easy. What you would do is you would first make a frame for a mold out of wood. The frame would consist of 2 wooden boxes that, when put together side by side, would make a cube with a hole at the top, which was used to pour in the molten bronze. You would then place the dirt into the mold and pack it as tight as you could. You would then put a fully formed Khopesh blade with tang into the mold. If you did not have one, carve a rough estimate of the shape into the dirt, shut the box tight, and pour in the molten bronze. If the shape does not come out as desired, make adjustments to the shape and the printed sword, and imprint the shape into the mold and repeat until that shape is as you want it. Once it is as you want it, sharpen the blade. When the bronze has finished cooling, carve a handle with a hole that perfectly matches the tang, and create 2 small holes, the shape and location of where they are going to be on the tang. For military purposes, the handles were made out of wood. However, for ceremonial or royal purposes, the handles may have been made of bronze or gold. Insert the handle into the tang and insert 2 rods where the 2 holes line up. Cut the rods or sand them down so they are level with the handle. This is so the blade does not fall out the handle. Sharpen and sand down the sword at will. It is now, once again, the time for the opinion that no one asked about. I give this a solid 7 out of 10. It's a very useful and versatile weapon. However, its size can leave large gaps in your defense if it is not paired with another Khopesh or a shield. Alright, well, I appreciate you staying this long.